Baby heard a German shepherd crying from a cave in the jungle. What happened next? Left everyone in tears. The crying was so faint that most people would have missed it completely. But 5-year-old Sam heard it clearly. And what he did next would change not just one life, but an entire village forever. Before we begin this incredible story, please like and share it with someone who needs their faith in humanity restored today. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from right now. The morning mist hung heavy over Willowbrook, a small village that sat right at the edge of the jungle like a last outpost of civilization. Sam pressed his small nose against the cool window glass of his grandfather's kitchen, watching the fog swirl between the massive trees that marked where the safe world ended and the wild one began. His mother Emma was at the stove, making breakfast while talking to grandfather Henry about adult things that Sam didn't really care about. Bills, work schedules, something about the roads being bad after the recent storms. But then Sam heard it. A sound that made him forget all about the pancakes his mother was making. It was crying. Not human crying, but something else. Something that pulled at his heart in a way he couldn't explain. "Mama," Sam said, tugging at Emma's sleeve. "Do you hear that?" Emma paused, spatula in hand, and listened. The only sounds were birds chirping and the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. "Hear what, sweetheart?" "The crying," Sam insisted, his voice dropping to a whisper, as if speaking too loud might scare the sound away. "Something's crying in the jungle." Henry looked up from his newspaper, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Sam, that's just the wind through the trees, or maybe some wild animals. The jungle is full of sounds that can trick your ears." But Sam shook his head firmly. He knew the difference between wind and crying. This was definitely crying, and it sounded scared and hurt and alone. The sound pulled at something deep in his chest, making his eyes water, even though he wasn't the one who was sad. "It sounds like a dog," Sam said, moving back to the window. "A big dog that needs help." Emma and Henry exchanged glances over Sam's head. It was the kind of look adults gave each other when they thought children were being silly, but didn't want to say it out loud. Sam had seen that look before, and it always made him feel smaller than he already was. "Sweetheart," Emma said gently, kneeling down to Sam's level. "Even if there was a dog out there, the jungle isn't safe. There are snakes, wild boars, and deep ravines. Plus, we've had 3 hikers go missing in the last month alone. Nobody goes into that jungle without a very good reason." "But what if the dog is hurt?" Sam's voice cracked slightly. "What if it's trapped and scared and waiting for someone to help?" Henry folded his newspaper with a sharp snap that made Sam jump. "The jungle takes care of its own. Boy, whatever's out there, if anything's out there at all, it's not our problem. Nature has its ways." Sam wanted to argue, but he knew that tone in his grandfather's voice. It was the same tone he used when he talked about the war, or when the news showed sad things happening far away. It was his way of saying the conversation was over, but the crying didn't stop. All through breakfast, while Emma and Henry discussed grown-up things, Sam could hear it. Faint but persistent, like a radio turned down low but never quite off. He picked at his pancakes, usually his favorite breakfast, but today they tasted like cardboard. How could he eat when something out there was suffering? "Can I play in the backyard?" Sam asked when his plate was finally clear enough that his mother wouldn't make him eat more. "Stay where I can see you from the window," Emma said, already distracted by helping Henry fix a leaky faucet. Sam nodded and slipped outside. The backyard was big, stretching all the way to where a wooden fence marked the boundary between grandfather's property and the jungle. The fence was old and had gaps where boards had rotted away. Henry always said he'd fix it someday, but someday never seemed to come. The crying was louder out here, not loud enough that someone who wasn't listening would notice. But to Sam, it was as clear as if someone was calling his name. He walked slowly toward the fence, his heart beating faster with each step. The sound was definitely coming from deeper in the jungle, maybe from the old path that Henry had shown him once, but told him never to use. Sam looked back at the house. Through the kitchen window, he could see his mother and grandfather working on the sink, their backs turned to him. They were laughing about something, completely unaware of the drama playing out in their backyard. The crying came again, longer this time, and Sam could hear pain in it, real pain. The kind that made his own chest hurt in sympathy. He thought about his mother's words about the jungle being dangerous. He thought about his grandfather's warning about nature taking care of itself. But then he thought about how he would feel if he was hurt and alone and crying for help, and everyone just ignored him because it was too dangerous or too much trouble. Before he could think too much about it, before the adult voices in his head could talk him out of it, Sam squeezed through one of the gaps in the fence. The jungle was different from how it looked from the house. Darker, even though it was still morning. The trees were so tall and their leaves so thick that they blocked out most of the sunlight, creating a green twilight that made everything look mysterious and a little scary. The ground was soft under Sam's feet, covered in years of fallen leaves that had turned into a springy carpet. The path was still there, though barely visible under vines and overgrown bushes. Sam remembered walking on it with Henry last year, before his grandfather's leg started hurting too much for long walks. They had only gone a little way in before turning back, but Henry had pointed deeper into the jungle and told Sam about how the path used to connect Willowbrook to other villages, back before there were roads and cars. The crying was clearer now, and Sam could tell he was getting closer. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, competing with the sound of birds and insects and things moving in the underbrush that he tried not to think too much about. Every few steps he would stop and listen, making sure he was still going the right way. The path curved around a huge tree that must have been hundreds of years old, and suddenly Sam could hear the crying echo differently. It sounded hollow now, like it was coming from inside something. He pushed through a curtain of hanging vines and stopped so suddenly he almost fell over. There was a cave, not a big cave like in the adventure movies he watched with his mother, but a dark opening in a wall of rock that was covered with moss and more vines. The crying was definitely coming from inside, and now that he was closer, Sam could hear other sounds too. Whimpering, panting, the scratch of claws against stone. Sam's hands were shaking as he pulled out the small flashlight he always carried in his pocket. It was a gift from Henry, who said a person should always be prepared. The beam was weak, barely penetrating the darkness of the cave, but it was enough to see a few feet inside. "Hello?" Sam called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you hurt?" The crying stopped immediately, replaced by a low growl that made Sam take a step back. But then, as if the animal inside realized this was a child's voice, the growl faded into a whimper. Sam took a deep breath and stepped into the cave. The smell hit him first. Wet dog, blood, and something else that he couldn't identify but that made his stomach turn. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he saw the source of all the crying. It was a German shepherd, bigger than any dog Sam had ever seen. The animal was lying on its side, and Sam could see why it couldn't get up. Its back leg was caught in something metal that glinted in the weak beam of his flashlight. The fur around the trap was matted with blood, some dried and dark, some fresh and bright red. The dog's ribs showed through its coat, and Sam could count each one. How long had it been trapped here? Days? Weeks? The dog lifted its head slightly when Sam approached, and their eyes met. The dog's eyes were brown and full of pain, but also something else. Hope, maybe. Or just surprise that someone had finally come. "Oh no," Sam whispered, kneeling down just out of reach of the dog's head. "You're really hurt, aren't you?" The dog whimpered again, and its tail moved slightly. Not quite a wag, but an attempt at one. Sam could see a collar buried in the matted fur around the dog's neck. There was a tag, but it was so dirty he couldn't read it. "I'm Sam," he said softly, the way his mother talked to him when he was scared or hurt. "I heard you crying. I came to help." The dog watched him carefully as he inched closer. Sam had been around dogs before, mostly friendly ones in the neighborhood, but never one that was hurt and scared like this. He knew that scared animals could bite, even nice ones, but something in this dog's eyes told him it wouldn't hurt him. Sam reached out slowly, giving the dog time to see his hand coming. The dog tensed but didn't growl. When Sam's small fingers touched the dog's head, the animal let out a long sigh, as if it had been holding its breath for days. "You're okay now," Sam said, even though he knew that wasn't true. The dog was definitely not okay. "I'm going to get help." He tried to look at the trap, but it was complicated, with springs and metal teeth that had bitten deep into the dog's leg. Sam pulled at it gently, but the dog cried out in pain, and he immediately stopped. This wasn't something a 5-year-old could fix, no matter how much he wanted to. I have to get my mama, Sam said, standing up. And my grandpa. They'll know what to do. The dog's eyes followed him as he backed toward the cave entrance, and it started crying again. Not the same crying as before, but a desperate, pleading sound that seemed to say, "Don't leave me." "I'll come back," Sam promised. "I promise I'll come back." He ran then, faster than he had ever run before, through the jungle, down the path, squeezing through the fence so quickly he tore his shirt. He burst through the back door with such force that Emma dropped the wrench she was holding. "Sam! What on earth?" She stopped when she saw his face. Tears were streaming down his cheeks, and his clothes were covered in mud and leaves. "Mama, there's a dog. A big dog in a cave, and it's trapped and hurt and bleeding, and we have to help it." Emma immediately grabbed him, checking him over for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did it bite you?" "No, Mama, listen. The dog is nice, but it's stuck in a trap, and it's been there for a long time, and it's so skinny and scared, and we have to help." Henry had stood up from where he was working under the sink, his face stern. "You went into the jungle? After we specifically told you not to?" "The dog was crying, Grandpa. I couldn't just leave it. It's a wild animal, Sam. We're not going anywhere near it." "It's not wild. It has a collar. Someone loves it and is probably looking for it." Emma and Henry exchanged another one of those adult looks, but this time Sam didn't care. He grabbed his mother's hand and pulled. "Please, Mama, please. If you saw it, you'd understand. It looked at me like it had given up hope, and then, when I touched it, it was so grateful. We can't leave it there to die." Emma's expression softened. She knew her son, knew that he wouldn't let this go. And truthfully, the mother in her was proud that he wanted to help, even if the practical part of her was terrified about what could have happened. "How far into the jungle?" she asked. "Not far," Sam said quickly, sensing her weakening resolve. "Just past the big old tree. There's a cave." Henry shook his head. "This is foolish. We should call animal control." "They won't come out here for a stray," Emma said. "You know that. Then we leave it be." "Nature takes care of its own, I know," Emma interrupted. "But Henry, if it has a collar, it's someone's pet, someone's family member." The argument went on for several more minutes, but Sam could see his mother winning. Finally, Henry threw up his hands in defeat. "Fine, but we're taking protection. And if that animal shows any sign of aggression, we leave immediately." They gathered supplies quickly. Rope, a first aid kit, Henry's old army knife, thick gloves, and a blanket. Emma made Sam stay between them as they made their way back through the jungle, though he wanted to run ahead. When they reached the cave, Emma gasped. The dog was exactly as Sam had described, but somehow seeing it in person was worse. The animal was clearly suffering, its breathing labored and its eyes glazed with pain. "Oh, you poor thing," Emma whispered. Henry approached carefully, his movements slow and deliberate. The dog watched him, but didn't growl or show teeth. When Henry knelt down to examine the trap, the dog actually moved its head closer to Sam, as if seeking comfort from the child who had first shown it kindness. "It's an old poacher's trap," Henry said grimly. "Illegal for 20 years at least. The mechanism is rusted, but still holding strong." "Can you open it?" Emma asked. "Maybe. But it's going to hurt the dog when I do. Someone needs to hold its head, make sure it doesn't bite out of pain." "I'll do it," Sam said immediately. "Absolutely not," both adults said in unison. But the dog made the decision for them. It moved its head onto Sam's lap, looking up at him with those brown eyes that seemed to say, "I trust you." Emma watched nervously as Henry worked on the trap. It took several attempts, and each time the mechanism moved, the dog whimpered. But it never tried to bite, never even showed its teeth. Sam kept talking to it the whole time, telling it stories about his toys and his friends and all the fun they would have when the dog was better. Finally, with a screech of protesting metal, the trap released. The dog cried out once, sharp and loud, then went limp. For a terrifying moment, Sam thought it had died. But then he felt its chest rising and falling under his hand. "We need to get it to a vet," Emma said. "This is beyond what we can handle." "The nearest vet is in town, 30 minutes away," Henry said. "And I doubt they'll treat a stray without payment up front." "Then we'll pay," Emma said firmly. "I have savings." Henry looked at her in surprise. Emma was usually the practical one, the one who counted every penny and worried about bills. But something about this situation, maybe the way Sam was, looking at the dog like it was the most important thing in the world, had changed her mind. "The dog can't walk," Henry pointed out. "We'll have to carry it." It took all three of them to fashion a makeshift stretcher from the blanket and some branches. The dog was heavier than it looked, even being so skinny. They took turns carrying the stretcher through the jungle, stopping frequently to rest and readjust their grip. By the time they made it back to Henry's house, all three of them were exhausted and covered in sweat. They carefully loaded the dog into the back of Henry's old truck, Sam insisting on riding in the back to keep the dog company despite his mother's protests about safety. But as they were about to leave, they realized they had an audience. The commotion had attracted attention from the neighbors. Mrs. Peterson from next door was standing on her porch, arms crossed and face pinched with disapproval. Mr. Collins from across the street had come out of his garage, and the Thompson family had stopped their yard work to stare. "What's all this about?" Mrs. Peterson called out. "We found an injured dog," Emma explained. "We're taking it to the vet." Mrs. Peterson's expression soured even more. "A stray from the jungle? It could have rabies. Or worse. You're bringing disease into our neighborhood." Other neighbors started murmuring, and Sam could hear their comments floating across the yards. "Probably aggressive. Should call animal control. Waste of money on an animal no one wants. What if it attacks someone?" Sam felt tears prick his eyes again, but this time they were angry tears. How could these people be so mean? They hadn't seen the dog's gentle eyes or felt how carefully it had avoided hurting him, even when it was in terrible pain. "It's not a stray!" Sam shouted, surprising everyone, including himself. "It has a collar! Someone loves this dog." Mr. Collins laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "Even if that's true, kid, look at it. It's half dead. Would be kinder to put it out of its misery." "That's enough," Emma said sharply, her mother bear instincts kicking in. "We're taking this dog for medical care. What we do with our money and our time is our business." She climbed into the truck and started the engine, effectively ending the conversation. But as they drove away, Sam could see the neighbors still standing in their yards, shaking their heads and talking among themselves. He had a feeling this wasn't over. The drive to the veterinary clinic felt like it took forever. Sam kept his hand on the dog's head, feeling the warmth of its fur and the steady rhythm of its breathing. The dog's eyes were closed now, but every so often they would flutter open and look at Sam, as if making sure he was still there. "What should we call him?" Sam asked suddenly. "We're not naming it," Henry said from the passenger seat. "We're getting it medical help, then finding its owner." That's it. But Sam had already decided. The dog's fur. Under all the dirt and blood was a beautiful black and tan pattern that reminded him of his favorite blanket, and the way the dog had looked at him in the cave, like Sam was its last hope in a storm of pain and fear. "Max," Sam whispered to the dog. "Your name is Max." The dog's tail twitched just once, as if in agreement. The veterinary clinic was a small building, squeezed between a hardware store and a bakery. Dr. Sullivan, the vet, was a young woman with kind eyes who took one look at Max and immediately went into action. "How long has he been trapped?" she asked, as she and her assistant carefully lifted Max onto an examination table. "We don't know," Emma said. "We just found him today." Dr. Sullivan's examination was thorough but gentle. She cleaned the wound on Max's leg, took his temperature, listened to his heart, and checked his eyes and ears. Sam watched everything, wincing when Max whimpered, but never looking away. "The good news, Doctor," Sullivan finally said, "is that despite everything, he's a fighter. The wound is infected but hasn't gone septic. He's dehydrated and malnourished, but his organs seem to be functioning. With proper treatment, he should recover." "And the bad news?" Henry asked. "The treatment won't be cheap. He needs antibiotics, IV fluids, possibly surgery to repair damage to the leg, and several days of monitoring. We're looking at potentially $2,000, maybe more." The room went quiet. Sam looked up at his mother's face and saw her doing the mental math. $2,000 was more than they spent on groceries in 3 months. It was part of the car repair fund, the emergency savings, the money set aside for Sam's school supplies. "We can't," Henry said quietly. "Emma, be reasonable. That's too much for a dog that isn't even ours." Sam felt his world crumbling. After everything, after finding Max and getting him this far, were they really going to give up because of money? "Please, Mama," he whispered. "Please." Emma looked down at her son, then at Max lying on the table. The dog had opened his eyes and was looking at her too, not pleading exactly, but with a kind of resigned acceptance, as if he understood that, once again, humans were going to let him down. "Do what you need to do," Emma said to Dr. Sullivan. "I'll figure out the money." Henry made a sound of protest, but Emma held up her hand. "I'll take extra shifts. I'll sell some things. We'll manage." Dr. Sullivan smiled. "I can work out a payment plan. And honestly, seeing people care this much about an animal in need, it reminds me why I became a vet in the first place." As they prepared to leave Max in Dr. Sullivan's care, Sam leaned close to the dog's ear. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. "I'll come see you tomorrow and the next day, and every day until you're better. You're not alone anymore." Max's tail wagged weakly, and he licked Sam's hand once before closing his eyes. The drive home was quiet. Henry was clearly unhappy. About the expense, Emma was lost in thought about how to pay for everything, and Sam was already missing Max. But as they pulled into the driveway, they found an unexpected visitor waiting for them. Maria Gonzalez was sitting on their porch steps. She was an elderly woman who lived alone at the edge of the village, someone most people avoided because they said she was strange. She talked to herself, grew herbs that she claimed had healing powers, and had a house full of cats that the neighbors complained about. "I heard what you did," Maria said as they got out of the truck. "The whole neighborhood is talking about it." "I'm sure they are," Emma said tiredly. Maria stood up, and Sam noticed she was holding an envelope. "They're saying you're fools, wasting money on a dying stray. Thanks for the support," Henry muttered. "But I know better," Maria continued. "I know what it's like to see something broken and want to fix it, even when everyone tells you it's hopeless." She held out the envelope to Emma. "This is $500. It's not much, but it should help with the vet bills." Emma's eyes widened. "Maria, we can't accept this." "You can and you will," Maria said firmly. "That little boy of yours did something most adults wouldn't have the courage to do. He heard suffering and acted on it. That deserves to be rewarded, not punished." She turned to Sam and knelt down, her joints creaking. "You have a gift, child. You hear things others don't. You see pain that others ignore. Don't ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of that." Before anyone could respond, Maria was walking away, her long skirt swishing around her ankles. Emma opened the envelope and indeed found $500 in worn bills. "Why would she do that?" Henry asked, bewildered. Emma shook her head, equally confused, but Sam thought he understood. Maria was lonely, just like Max had been lonely. She knew what it was like to be ignored and dismissed. Maybe helping Max was her way of fighting back against a world that had forgotten about her. That night, Sam could barely sleep. He kept thinking about Max at the vet clinic, probably scared and confused about where Sam had gone. He thought about the trap, rusty and cruel, and wondered how long Max had been there, crying for help that never came. Until today. Until Sam heard him. The next morning, Sam was up before sunrise, dressed and ready to visit Max before his mother was even awake. Emma found him sitting at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of Max to hang in the dog's kennel at the clinic. "He might be lonely," Sam explained. "This way he can look at it and remember that we're coming back for him." Emma's heart melted a little more. Her son's empathy constantly amazed her. While other 5-year-olds were concerned with toys and cartoons, Sam was worried about a dog feeling abandoned. "We can visit him this afternoon," Emma promised. "But first, you have to eat breakfast and help Grandpa with some chores." Morning dragged by, painfully slowly for Sam. He helped Henry fix the fence, the irony not lost on anyone that they were repairing the very barrier Sam had snuck through. He watered the garden and swept the porch, all the while thinking about Max. Finally, it was time to go to the clinic. Dr. Sullivan met them with a smile. "Your timing is perfect. Someone just woke up and has been looking around like he's expecting someone." She led them to the recovery area, where Max was in a large kennel. He was lying on a soft bed, an IV attached to his front leg, the injured back leg wrapped in clean white bandages. But the biggest change was his eyes. They were clearer, more alert, and when he saw Sam, his whole body seemed to light up. Max's tail started wagging so hard that his whole back end moved with it. He tried to stand but couldn't quite manage it yet, so he settled for stretching his neck as far as he could toward the kennel door. "Max!" Sam exclaimed. "And Doctor." Sullivan opened the kennel so he could sit beside the dog. Max immediately rested his head on Sam's lap, sighing contentedly. It was such a different sound from the crying in the cave that Sam felt tears spring to his eyes again, but happy tears this time. "He wouldn't eat this morning, Doctor," Sullivan said. "But look at this." She offered Max a small piece of chicken. The dog sniffed it, but didn't take it, looking at Sam instead. "It's okay, boy," Sam said. "You can eat it." Only then did Max gently take the chicken from Doctor Sullivan's hand. "It's like he was waiting for permission, Doctor," Sullivan said, amazed. "Or waiting for you. I've never seen a bond form this quickly between a child and a dog." Emma watched her son with Max, seeing how naturally they fit together. The dog clearly adored Sam, and Sam looked happier than she'd seen him in months, maybe since his father had left 2 years ago, though she tried not to think about that too often. "Has anyone called about a missing dog?" Emma asked. Dr. Sullivan shook her head. "I've checked with all the local shelters and put up notices online. Nothing so far, but I did manage to clean his collar tag. The name is too worn to read fully, but I can make out part of a phone number." She handed Emma a piece of paper with a partial number written on it. Several digits were missing, making it impossible to call. "I'll keep trying to clean it, Doctor," Sullivan said. "Sometimes with the right chemicals, we can recover more information." They stayed for an hour, Sam telling Max all about his plans for when the dog was better. He described the backyard where Max could run, the soft bed he would make for him, the toys he would share. Max listened to every word, his eyes never leaving Sam's face. But eventually, they had to leave. Max whined when Sam stood up, trying again to follow despite his injuries. "I'll be back tomorrow," Sam promised, "and the next day, and the next day. Every day until you can come home." As they walked to the truck, Emma's phone rang. It was her boss at the grocery store where she worked. "Emma, I heard about what you're doing with that stray dog. Mrs. Peterson is telling everyone you're bringing disease into the neighborhood. I'm getting complaints from customers." Emma's stomach dropped. "It's just a dog that needs help." "I understand that, but I can't have controversy affecting business. If this continues to be a problem, I might have to cut your hours." Emma hung up feeling sick. They needed every penny from her job, especially now with Max's vet bills. But she looked at Sam's hopeful face and couldn't bring herself to tell him about the threat. That evening, the situation got worse. Someone had left a note on their door. "Get rid of the diseased mutt or face the consequences." Henry was furious. "This is harassment. We should call the police." But Emma knew that would only make things worse. In a small community like Willowbrook, making enemies of your neighbors was dangerous. These were the people who could make their lives miserable in 1,000 small ways. The next few days fell into a pattern. Sam would visit Max every afternoon, and the dog's condition steadily improved. The infection cleared up, he started eating regularly, and by the 4th day, he could stand and take a few limping steps. But the pressure from the community was growing. Emma's hours at work were cut in half. Someone threw a rock through Henry's truck window. The Thompson children were told they couldn't play with Sam anymore. Sam noticed the changes, but didn't understand why everyone was being so mean. All they had done was help a hurt animal. Why did that make people angry? On the 5th day, Doctor, Sullivan had news. "I've managed to clean the collar tag completely. The dog's name is actually Max, just like Sam has been calling him. And I have a full phone number now." Emma's heart raced as Doctor. Sullivan dialed the number on speakerphone. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. "This is James Mitchell. I'm currently deployed overseas with the military. If this is an emergency, please contact..." The message gave another number. Dr. Sullivan dialed that one and reached a military communications officer who took down the information and promised to relay the message. 2 hours later, Emma's phone rang. The voice on the other end was young, tired, and emotional. "This is James Mitchell. I got a message about Max. Is he really alive?" Emma quickly explained finding Max in the trap, his condition, and his recovery. There was silence on the other end for so long, she thought the call had dropped. "I thought he was dead," James finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "He disappeared 8 months ago, right before I deployed. I searched everywhere, the police, the shelters. I put up hundreds of posters. Nothing. How did he disappear? Emma asked. I had to leave him with a friend while I was at training. When I got back, the friend said Max had jumped the fence and run away. But Max would never do that. He's trained. He was my brother's dog. There was something in the way he said "was" that made Emma's chest tight. My brother Ryan was also military, K-9 unit. Max was his partner for 6 years. They served 3 tours together. Ryan was killed in action 14 months ago. Max was with him. The dog was injured in the same explosion, but survived. They retired him and sent him home to me. Emma could hear James struggling to maintain composure. Max saved 12 lives in Afghanistan. He detected IEDs, found hidden weapons caches, protected his unit. He's not just a dog, he's a hero. And after Ryan died, he was all I had left of my brother. Sam had been listening to the whole conversation, and now he was crying openly. Max was a hero who had lost his person, just like Sam had lost his dad in a different way. We've been taking good care of him, Emma assured James. My son Sam found him and refused to give up on him. They've bonded incredibly. Sam, James said, is he there? Can I talk to him? Sam took the phone with shaking hands. Hello? Sam, I want to thank you. You saved Max's life, but more than that, you gave me back my family. I don't have the words to tell you what this means to me. Max is really brave, Sam said. Even when he was hurt and scared, he was gentle. He never tried to bite or be mean. That's Max, James said with a watery laugh. Ryan used to say Max had the heart of a warrior and the soul of a teddy bear. When can you come get him? Sam asked, though his heart was breaking at the thought of Max leaving. There was a pause. That's the thing. I'm deployed for another 4 months, and even when I get back, I'm being stationed in Alaska. The base housing doesn't allow dogs, especially not big ones like Max. Sam's heart soared with hope, but he tried not to show it. I've been trying to find a good home for him even before he disappeared, James continued. Someone who would understand what he's been through, who would be patient with his trauma. Sam, would you and your family consider keeping Max? Sam almost dropped the phone. Really? We can keep him? If your parents agree. I'll send money for his food and any medical care. I just need to know he's with people who love him. And from what I'm hearing, he already found that. Emma took the phone back. Mr. Mitchell, we would be honored to care for Max, but you should know, our community hasn't been supportive. They see him as a dangerous stray. Send me your email, James said immediately. I'll send you Max's service records, his medals, newspaper articles about his heroics. Let them try to call a war hero, dog dangerous. That evening, Emma printed out everything James had sent. There were photos of Max in his military vest, standing proud beside Ryan. Articles about successful missions where Max had saved lives. A certificate of commendation from a general. And most touching, a photo of Max lying beside Ryan's grave at a military cemetery, taken just weeks before Max disappeared. We need to show everyone, Sam said. They need to know Max is a hero. Henry, who had been skeptical about keeping Max, was now fully on board. The town council meeting is tomorrow night. It's open forum. We could present this information. But will they listen? Emma asked. They'll have to, Henry said with determination. This dog served our country. The least our community can do is show him respect. But when they arrived at the vet clinic the next morning for Sam's daily visit, they found Dr. Sullivan in tears. What's wrong? Emma asked, alarmed. Dr. Sullivan pointed to her window, which had been spray-painted with the words, "Stop harboring dangerous animals." This is the 3rd time this week, Doctor, Sullivan said. I've had clients cancel appointments. People are saying I'm putting the community at risk by treating Max. Mrs. Peterson has started a petition to have my license reviewed. Sam ran to Max's kennel. The dog was standing now, his tail wagging despite the bandages. He had no idea that his presence was causing so much trouble. All he knew was that his boy was here. This has to stop, Emma said. Tonight, at the town meeting, we end this. But she had no idea that Mrs. Peterson and her supporters were planning something too, something that would put Max in more danger than he'd ever faced in war zones. The rest of the day passed in tense preparation. Emma practiced what she would say at the meeting. Henry gathered more evidence of Max's service. Sam made a poster with photos of Max, both as a military dog and as the gentle animal he was now. As the sun set and they prepared to leave for the town hall, none of them noticed the figure watching their house from the shadows. Someone who had been looking for Max for 8 months, but not for the reasons they thought. The town meeting was about to become a battleground, not just for Max's future, but for the soul of the community itself. And Sam, a 5-year-old boy who just wanted to save a crying dog, was about to show everyone what real courage looked like. The town hall was packed fuller than Sam had ever seen it. Every seat was taken, and people were standing along the walls, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Sam held his poster tight against his chest, his small hands trembling slightly. Max's photos seemed to look back at him, giving him courage he didn't know he had. Emma placed a protective hand on Sam's shoulder as they walked down the center aisle. She could feel every eye in the room following them, could hear the whispers starting already. Henry walked behind them, carrying the folder full of Max's military records, his jaw set with determination. Mrs. Peterson was already at the front, talking animatedly with Mayor Richards. The mayor was a tall man with silver hair who always smiled during election season but seemed to forget how the rest of the year. When he saw Emma's family approaching, his smile became even more forced. "Ah, the Pattersons," Mayor Richards said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I understand you have something you'd like to discuss during the open forum?" "We do," Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. "As do we," Mrs. Peterson interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "About the public health hazard this family has brought into our community." Sam felt his chest get tight. He wanted to tell Mrs. Peterson that Max wasn't a hazard, that he was a hero, but the words got stuck in his throat. There were so many adults here, all looking at him like he had done something wrong. "The open forum will begin in 5 minutes," Mayor Richards announced. "Please take your seats." They found 3 empty chairs near the middle of the room. Sam noticed Maria sitting alone in the back corner, her eyes kind but worried. Dr. Sullivan was there too, looking tired and stressed. But most of the faces were unfriendly, people who had already made up their minds before hearing a single word. Mayor Richards called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of his gavel. "We have several matters to discuss tonight, but I understand there's an urgent issue regarding a stray animal that was brought into our community. Mrs. Peterson, since you filed the formal complaint, you may speak first." Mrs. Peterson stood up, smoothing her dress with satisfaction. "Thank you, Mayor Richards. 5 days ago, this family," she pointed at Emma, Henry, and Sam, "deliberately brought a dangerous, diseased animal from the jungle into our town. This dog, which was found in suspicious circumstances, has no vaccination records, no history, and showed aggressive behavior." "That's not true!" Sam burst out, unable to stay quiet. "Max never hurt anyone." "The child just proved my point," Mrs. Peterson continued smoothly. "They've already named it, grown attached to it. They're not thinking clearly about the danger this animal poses. It was found in a trap, which suggests it was causing problems before. It could have rabies, parasites, or worse." Several people in the crowd murmured agreement. Sam saw Mr. Collins nodding along, and the Thompson family was whispering among themselves. Furthermore, Mrs. Peterson continued, her voice getting louder. "This family has been irresponsible with their finances, spending thousands of dollars on a stray while honest, hard-working people in this community struggle to pay their bills. It sets a terrible example for our children." "What example?" Henry stood up suddenly, his face red with anger. "That compassion matters? That we should help those who can't help themselves?" "Sit down, Mr. Wilson," Mayor Richards said. "You'll have your turn." But Mrs. Peterson wasn't done. "I have here a petition signed by 47 residents demanding that this dog be removed from our community immediately, and that the family be fined for bringing a public health risk into our midst." She handed the petition to Mayor Richards with a triumphant smile. Sam felt tears building in his eyes. 47 people wanted Max gone. 47 people thought they had done something wrong by saving him. "Additionally," Mrs. Peterson said, and her voice took on a darker tone, "there have been some questions about how the child even found this dog. The jungle is off limits to children for good reason. What was a 5-year-old doing there alone? Perhaps we should be discussing parental negligence as well." Emma's face went white. The threat was clear. If they fought for Max, Mrs. Peterson would try to make them look like bad parents. Maybe even get child services involved. "That's enough, Mrs. Peterson," Mayor Richards said, though he looked pleased with the points she had raised. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, you may respond." Emma stood up slowly, her legs feeling like jelly. But before she could speak, Sam pulled away from her and walked to the front of the room, dragging his poster with him. "I want to tell you about Max," Sam said, his small voice somehow carrying through the entire hall. "Sweetheart, let Mama talk," Emma said, but Sam shook his head. "No, I found him. I should tell it." He turned to face the crowd, holding up his poster. "This is Max when he was a soldier dog. He worked with James's brother Ryan in Afghanistan. He saved 12 people's lives." The room had gone quiet. Sam pointed to one of the photos. "This is Max getting a medal for being brave. He found bombs before they could hurt people. He protected soldiers who were protecting us." Sam's voice got stronger as he continued. "And this is Max at Ryan's grave. Ryan died saving people, and Max was hurt in the same explosion. He has scars not because he's mean, but because he's a hero." "That could be any German shepherd," Mrs. Peterson said dismissively. "You have no proof that Stray is the same dog." Henry stood up and walked forward with the folder. "Actually, we do. James Mitchell, the dog's legal owner and a currently deployed serviceman, sent us Max's complete military records, including identifying scars and markings that match exactly." He started pulling out documents, laying them on the mayor's desk. Commendation from General Morrison, news article from the Army Times about Max's unit, veterinary records from his military service, and a letter from James Mitchell himself, explaining that Max went missing 8 months ago under suspicious circumstances. The crowd was murmuring now, but differently than before. People were leaning forward, trying to see the documents. "Max didn't run away," Sam said, his voice shaking but determined. "Someone took him. Someone stole a hero dog and left him to die in that trap." "That's a serious accusation," Mayor Richards said, but he looked uncomfortable now. "It's the truth," Emma said, finally finding her voice. "And we have evidence. The friend who was supposedly watching Max when he disappeared, his name was David Carson. Does anyone know where David Carson moved to 8 months ago?" The room was silent. "He moved here," Emma continued, "to Willowbrook, right around the time Max went missing." The silence in the room was deafening now. Everyone knew David Carson. He worked at the hardware store, lived in a nice house on Oak Street, always seemed to have money despite his modest job. "You can't just accuse someone without proof," Mayor Richards said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The proof is that Max is terrified of men who smell like motor oil, Doctor." Sullivan spoke up from her seat. "David Carson works part-time at the garage. The proof is that Max has scars consistent with being hit with a wrench. And David Carson is known for his temper. The proof is that a decorated military dog doesn't just disappear and end up in a poacher's trap by accident." "Why would David steal a dog just to hurt it?" someone called out from the crowd. Maria stood up in the back, her voice carrying surprising strength. "Because some people make money from dog fighting. And what could be more valuable than a military-trained attack dog?" The crowd erupted in shocked conversation. Dogfighting was illegal, cruel, and the thought that it might be happening in their community was horrifying. "But Max wouldn't fight," Sam said loudly. "That's why he was in the trap. He wouldn't do what they wanted, so they left him to die." Mayor Richards was sweating now. "These are very serious allegations. We can't just—" He was interrupted by the sound of the door slamming open. David Carson himself stood there, his face red with rage. He was a big man, muscular from his work, and his presence immediately made the room tense. "I heard you were spreading lies about me," he snarled, looking directly at Emma. Sam instinctively moved closer to his mother. But then something extraordinary happened. From outside came a sound that made everyone freeze. It was barking. Not just any barking, but the deep, authoritative bark of a German shepherd. "Max," Sam whispered. The door pushed open wider, and there was Max, standing on 3 legs with his bandaged leg held up. Behind him was Doctor, Sullivan's assistant, looking panicked. "He broke out of his kennel when he heard the commotion," the assistant explained. "I couldn't stop him." Max's eyes were locked on David Carson. The fur on his back was standing up, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. This wasn't the gentle dog Sam knew. This was a military dog who had identified a threat. David took a step back. "Keep that mutt away from me." But Max advanced, limping but determined. His growl got louder, and his lips pulled back to show his teeth. The crowd pressed against the walls, giving the dog room. "Max, no!" Sam called out, afraid the dog would hurt himself more. But then he noticed something. Max wasn't attacking. He was herding David toward the corner, using the same technique military dogs use to contain suspects. "Get it away from me!" David shouted, but his voice had gone high, with fear. "Interesting," Henry said calmly. "The dog that supposedly never met you seems to remember you very well." "This proves nothing," David said, but he was sweating now. Max barked once, sharp and commanding, and David flinched so hard he knocked over a chair. That's when something fell out of his pocket. A collar, a military dog collar with a tag that read, MWD Max, Handler Sergeant. Ryan Mitchell. The room went absolutely silent. Sam walked forward slowly and picked up the collar. "You kept it." Like a trophy, David's face had gone from red to white. "That's not... I can explain..." "Explain what?" James Mitchell's voice came through Emma's phone, which she had called when Max appeared. She had him on speaker now. "Explain how you stole my brother's dog, how you tried to force a war hero to fight for your entertainment." "I want a lawyer," David muttered. "You'll need one," Mayor Richards said, his political instincts finally kicking in. He couldn't be seen supporting someone involved in dog fighting. "Someone call the police." But Max wasn't done. He limped over to Sam and did something that made everyone in the room gasp. He sat down in perfect military position, then raised his paw to his head in what looked like a salute. It was a trick Ryan had taught him, James's voice explained through the phone, something Max only did for people he considered his commanding officer. Sam saluted back, tears streaming down his face, and Max finally relaxed, leaning against the boy's legs. "I think we've seen enough," someone in the crowd said. It was Mr. Thompson, who had been one of the petition signers. "I'd like to withdraw my name from that petition." "Me too," said someone else, then another, and another. Mrs. Peterson was standing alone now, her face twisted with frustration. "This doesn't change the fact that the dog is still a potential danger. The only danger here," Maria interrupted, walking to the front of the room, "is people like you who are so filled with fear and judgment that you can't recognize heroism when it's standing right in front of you." She turned to address the crowd. "This dog served our country. This child showed more courage and compassion than any adult in this room. And this family spent their savings to help a creature in need. They should be celebrated, not persecuted." The crowd was shifting now. People were looking ashamed, avoiding eye contact with Emma and Sam. The Thompsons were whispering apologies. Mr. Collins had slunk out the back door. "I motion, Doctor," Sullivan said, standing up, "that the town of Willowbrook officially recognize Max as a hero and welcome him as a permanent resident." "I second that motion," Henry said proudly. Mayor Richards, seeing which way the wind was blowing, quickly called for a vote. It was almost unanimous, with only Mrs. Peterson and 2 others voting against. As David Carson was led away by the police who had arrived, he turned back one last time. "That dog is damaged. Goods. He'll never be normal. You'll see." But Sam didn't care what David said. He was sitting on the floor now, with Max's head in his lap, carefully checking to make sure the dog hadn't hurt himself worse by breaking out and walking on his injured leg. "You came to protect us," Sam whispered to Max. "Even though you're hurt, you came." Max's tail wagged weakly, and he licked Sam's face. James's voice came through the phone again. "Sam, I'm watching through video call now. Can you hear me?" "Yes, Mr. James. I want you to know that Ryan would be so proud that Max found you. You gave Max something to fight for again. You gave him a purpose. That's all he ever wanted, to protect good people." The meeting broke up after that, but people didn't leave immediately. Instead, they came forward one by one to apologize, to pet Max, to offer help. Mr. Thompson offered to build a doghouse. The bakery owner promised free dog biscuits for life. Even some of the petition signers offered to help with vet bills. Mrs. Peterson left without saying a word, but Sam saw her pause at the door and look back. For just a moment, her harsh expression softened as she watched Max leaning against Sam. And Sam could have sworn he saw tears in her eyes. Over the next few days, the story of Max and Sam spread beyond Willowbrook. A local news station picked it up, then a national one. The headline, 5-year-old boy saves war hero dog appeared in newspapers across the country. Donations poured in for Max's medical care, far more than they needed. Emma and Sam decided to use the extra money to start a fund for other injured military dogs. But the biggest surprise came a week later. A black SUV pulled up to their house and out stepped a man in full military dress uniform. He was older, with gray hair and more medals than Sam could count. "I'm General Morrison," he said, shaking Henry's hand. "I served with Sergeant Mitchell and his dog Max. I heard what happened here." He knelt down to Sam's level. "Young man, what you did took real courage. You stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for himself. That's what real heroes do." From his pocket, he pulled out a medal. "This is a civilian service award. It's given to people who show exceptional bravery and compassion. I can't think of anyone who deserves it more." As he pinned the medal to Sam's shirt, Max barked once, that same authoritative bark from the town meeting. General Morrison smiled. "I think Max agrees." But the story wasn't over yet. David Carson, trying to make a deal with prosecutors, revealed the location of a dog-fighting ring that had been operating in the countryside. 15 dogs were rescued, all of them scarred and traumatized. The organizers were arrested, and it was discovered that Mayor Richards had known about it but looked the other way in exchange for campaign contributions. The mayor resigned in disgrace, and a special election was held. To everyone's surprise, Maria Gonzalez was nominated to run. She won by a landslide, becoming the first mayor in Willowbrook's history to prioritize animal welfare. One evening, as the sun was setting and painting the sky orange and pink, Sam and Max sat in the backyard. Max's leg had healed completely, though he still had a slight limp. It didn't slow him down when he played fetch or ran around with Sam. "You know what, Max?" Sam said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "I think we saved each other." Max woofed softly in agreement. Emma watched from the kitchen window, her heart full. The journey that had started with a child hearing crying in the jungle had transformed their entire community. It had exposed corruption, revealed heroes, and taught everyone that sometimes the smallest voice can speak the loudest truth. 3 months later, James Mitchell came home from deployment. The reunion between him and Max was emotional, with the dog crying and spinning in circles despite his old injuries. But after the initial excitement, Max did something that surprised everyone. He walked back to Sam and sat down beside him, looking between James and the boy as if asking permission to stay. "I think Max has made his choice," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "And honestly, I couldn't ask for a better family for him." "But he's your brother's dog," Sam said, even though his heart was breaking at the thought of Max leaving. James knelt down and put a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Ryan always said that dogs choose their people. Max chose you, Sam. You heard him when no one else did. You saved him when everyone else gave up. You're his person now." The legal transfer was completed that day, making Sam officially Max's owner, but more than papers were exchanged. James gave Sam Ryan's military dog tags and a photo album of Max's service years. "So, he never forgets where he came from," James said, "and neither do you." As James drove away, Sam held the dog tags in one hand and Max's collar in the other. The weight of them felt significant, like holding history and future at the same time. Dr. Sullivan later reported that Max's story had inspired a wave of adoptions at local shelters. People who had never considered rescue animals before were now opening their homes to dogs and cats that needed second chances. She started a program called Max's Heroes that provided free medical care to pets of military families. Mrs. Peterson, who had been so against Max, experienced her own transformation. One day, she showed up at Emma's door with a homemade apple pie and an apology. "I was scared," she admitted. "My husband was attacked by a dog when he was young, and I let that fear turn into hatred. Watching that boy of yours with Max, it changed something in me." She started volunteering at the animal shelter, and within a month, she had adopted an elderly cat that no one else wanted. Sam would often see her walking past their house, stopping to give Max a treat and a pat on the head. The cave where Sam had found Max was turned into a memorial site. A plaque was installed that read, "Sometimes heroes need saving too," in memory of Sergeant Ryan Mitchell and in honor of all service animals who give their lives for others. Every month, Sam and Max would visit the cave, leaving flowers and dog biscuits. Max would sniff around, but he never showed fear of the place. It was as if he understood that this dark cave had actually been the beginning of his new life. On the first anniversary of finding Max, the town held a celebration. It was officially called the Willowbrook Community Day, but everyone knew it as Max Day. There were adoption drives, military dog demonstrations, and a parade where Max and Sam led the way. During the celebration, a shy little girl approached Sam. She was holding her mother's hand tightly, and Sam could see fear in her eyes. Is he safe?" she whispered, looking at Max. Sam remembered being scared once, too, though it felt like a lifetime ago. "Max is the safest dog in the world," he said gently. "Do you want to meet him?" The little girl nodded hesitantly. Sam showed her how to hold out her hand for Max to sniff, how to pet him gently, how to read his body language. Within minutes, the girl was giggling as Max licked her face. "See?" Sam said. "Sometimes the things that look scary are actually the most loving." The girl's mother had tears in her eyes. "She's been afraid of dogs since she was 3. This is the first time I've seen her touch one." This became Sam's new mission. He and Max started visiting schools, teaching children about animal safety, compassion, and the importance of not judging by appearances. They called it the Max Method, approaching fear with love instead of more fear. One day they received a letter that would change everything again. It was from the military, inviting Max to be inducted into the Military Working Dog Hall of Fame. It was an honor reserved for only the most exceptional service dogs. The ceremony was held at a military base 3 states away. Sam wore his best clothes and the medal General Morrison had given him. Max wore his service vest, cleaned and pressed for the occasion. As they walked into the ceremony hall, Sam gasped. It was filled with hundreds of people, all standing and applauding. There were active military members, veterans, families of service dogs, and even some of the people Max had saved during his service. One by one, people came forward to share stories about Max. A soldier talked about how Max had detected an IED that would have killed his entire squad. A mother thanked Max for finding her son when he was trapped under rubble after an explosion. A general described Max's unwavering loyalty to Ryan, how the dog had stayed by his handler's side even as the building collapsed around them. Sam listened to these stories with wonder. He had known Max was special, but hearing about his heroic past made him understand just how extraordinary this dog really was. When it was Sam's turn to speak, he was nervous. He was just a kid among all these important people. But then he felt Max lean against his leg, and his fear melted away. "Max is a hero," Sam began, his voice small but clear. "But he's also just a dog who wanted to be loved. When I found him, he wasn't Max the military dog. He was just a hurt, scared animal who needed help. And that's what makes him really special. Even after everything he went through, all the bad things people did to him, he still trusted me. He still had love to give." Sam looked out at the audience. "Max taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. He taught me that heroes aren't just people in uniforms or capes. Sometimes heroes have 4 legs and wet noses." The audience laughed and Sam felt more confident. "But most importantly, Max taught me and my whole town that everyone deserves a second chance. That just because something looks broken doesn't mean it can't be fixed. That love is stronger than fear, and kindness is the bravest thing you can be." When Sam finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the tough-looking soldiers were wiping their faces. Max stood up and placed his paw on Sam's foot, his way of saying, "Good job." The formal induction was beautiful. Max's name was added to a wall of honor alongside other legendary military dogs. His paw print was preserved in clay for the memorial garden. He was given a new medal that would be displayed in the military museum. But the most meaningful moment came after the ceremony. A young soldier in a wheelchair approached them. He was missing his left leg, and Sam could see scars on his face and arms. "I'm Marcus," he said. "I was in Ryan's unit. I was there when it happened." Sam didn't know what to say, but Max did. The dog walked over to Marcus and gently placed his head on the soldier's remaining knee. "Ryan saved my life," Marcus said, tears flowing freely now. "And Max pulled me to safety after the explosion. I wouldn't be here without them both." He looked at Sam. "Thank you for saving him." for giving him the life Ryan would have wanted him to have. That night, in their hotel room, Sam couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about all the lives Max had touched, all the people who were alive because of this one dog. He thought about Ryan, whom he'd never met, but felt like he knew through Max. "I promise to take care of him," Sam whispered into the darkness. "I promise to make sure everyone knows how special he is." Max, sleeping at the foot of the bed, woofed softly in his sleep, his legs twitching as he dreamed of running. When they returned to Willowbrook, they found the town had prepared a surprise. A statue had been erected in the town square, a bronze sculpture of a boy and a German shepherd with a plaque that read, "Courage comes in all sizes." Dedicated to Sam Patterson and Max, who reminded us that compassion is the greatest strength. Sam was embarrassed by the attention, but Max seemed to understand the honor. He sat perfectly still for photos, his head high and proud. Life settled into a new rhythm. Sam went to school, where he was no longer the quiet, shy boy, but someone others looked up to. Max waited for him every day at the window, and their afternoon walks became a town tradition. People would wave from their porches, children would run up to pet Max, and sometimes other dog owners would join them, creating a parade of wagging tails. But Max's age and injuries were catching up with him. 5 years after Sam found him, Max started slowing down. His limp became more pronounced. He slept more and played less. Dr. Sullivan gently explained that Max's body had been through trauma that would affect his lifespan. Sam was devastated but determined to make every remaining day special. He created a bucket list for Max, things a hero dog should experience. They went to the beach, where Max barked at waves and dug holes in the sand. They went camping, where Max sat by the fire and howled at the moon like his wild ancestors. They visited Ryan's grave, where Max lay quietly for hours, seeming to communicate with his first handler in ways only they understood. One autumn morning, Max couldn't get up. Sam found him lying in his favorite sunny spot, breathing but unable to move his back legs. The rush to the vet clinic was a blur of tears and prayers. Dr. Sullivan was honest but gentle. "His spine has deteriorated, the old injuries. There's nothing more we can do medically. But he's not in pain. He's just tired." Sam spent every moment by Max's side. He read him stories, sang him songs, told him over and over how much he was loved. The whole town came to say goodbye. Marcus flew in from across the country. James took emergency leave from his deployment. Even Mrs. Peterson, now one of Max's biggest supporters, came to sit with them. On Max's last day, something amazing happened. As Sam sat crying beside him, Max managed to lift his paw and place it on Sam's hand. Then, with enormous effort, he raised his head and licked Sam's face one last time. "It's okay, boy," Sam whispered, though his heart was breaking. "You can rest now. You've been such a good dog, the best dog. You saved so many people, and you saved me too." Max's tail wagged once, weakly, and then he closed his eyes for the last time, with Sam's hand on his head and surrounded by people who loved him. The funeral was held at the Memorial Cave. Military honors were given, with a flag-folding ceremony and a 21-gun salute. Max was buried beside the memorial plaque, where his journey with Sam had begun. Sam spoke at the service, now 11 years old, but wise beyond his years. Max showed me that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they have 4 legs and a wagging tail. He taught me that being brave isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're scared. He taught our whole town that second chances can change the world. He paused, looking at all the faces gathered there. But most importantly, Max taught me that love doesn't die. Every time I help someone who's scared, every time I stand up for what's right, every time I choose kindness over fear, Max is still here. He lives on in every act of compassion, every moment of bravery, every second chance given. As they lowered Max's casket, wrapped in an American flag, into the ground, a remarkable thing happened. Dogs all over town began howling. Not sad howling, but a triumphant sound that seemed to say goodbye to one of their own. It lasted for minutes, echoing through the valley, a canine salute to a fallen hero. Years passed. Sam grew up to become a veterinarian, specializing in treating military and service dogs. He opened the Max Mitchell Memorial Clinic, providing free care to retired service animals. The wall of his office was covered with photos of Max and letters from people whose lives the dog had touched. Every year on the anniversary of finding Max, Sam would return to the cave with his own German Shepherd, a rescue he'd named Hope. He would tell Hope Max's story, and sometimes he could swear Hope understood every word. One day, a young mother brought in a scared, injured dog she'd found. As Sam treated the animal, he heard a small voice from the waiting room. "Mama, the doggie is crying. Can we help it?" Sam smiled, remembering another child who had heard a dog crying and refused to ignore it. He walked out to the waiting room and knelt beside the child. "You know what?" he said. "That's exactly what we're going to do. Because that's what heroes do. They help others who can't help themselves." The child's eyes widened. "Am I a hero?" "You are," Sam said, thinking of Max, of Ryan, of James, of all the connections that had been forged through one act of compassion. Anyone who chooses kindness is a hero. As he went back to treat the injured dog, Sam touched the photo of Max he always carried in his pocket. "Still teaching me, boy," he whispered. "Still saving lives, even now." The story of Sam and Max became legend in Willowbrook and beyond. Books were written about them. A documentary was made. Schools taught their story as an example of compassion and courage. But for Sam, it was always simply about a boy who heard a dog crying and couldn't walk away. On his wedding day, Sam visited Max's grave. "I'm getting married today, boy. She's a veterinarian too. She loves dogs as much as you did. You would have loved her." The wind rustled through the trees, and for just a moment, Sam could have sworn he heard a familiar bark in the distance. When Sam's first child was born, a daughter he named Maxine, he brought her to the memorial as soon as she was old enough to understand. "This is where it all started," he told her, holding her small hand. "This is where I learned that one person, no matter how small, can make a difference. Where I learned that kindness is the most powerful force in the world." Maxine looked up at him, with eyes that reminded him of his own at that age, full of wonder and compassion. "Daddy, if I heard an animal crying, I would help it too." Sam smiled, knowing that Max's legacy would continue through another generation. "I know you would, sweetheart. That's what makes you special." As they walked away from the memorial, hand in hand, Sam thought about the ripple effects of that day so many years ago. How many lives had been saved because one 5-year-old boy heard crying and acted on it? How many hearts had been opened? How many second chances given? The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, not in distress, but in joy. Sam squeezed his daughter's hand and smiled. Max was gone, but his spirit lived on in every act of kindness, every moment of bravery, every choice to help rather than turn away. The cave that had once held a dying dog had become a symbol of hope. The town that had once rejected a dangerous stray now welcomed all creatures in need. The boy who had once been too shy to speak up had become a man who dedicated his life to giving voices to the voiceless. And somewhere, in whatever place hero dogs go when their work is done, Max was running free, his injuries healed, his spirit whole, watching over the family he had chosen and the legacy he had left behind. The story that began with crying in a cave had become a testament to the power of compassion, proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world. And it all started because a 5-year-old boy heard a sound that others ignored and chose to act with his heart instead of his fear. If this story touched your heart and brought tears to your eyes, please like and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness can change the world. Subscribe to hear more incredible stories of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. And please comment below to tell us about a time when you or someone you know gave a second chance to someone who needed it. Where are you watching from? And has an animal ever changed your life the way Max changed Sam's? Your story might inspire someone else to hear the crying that others ignore and to act with compassion instead of fear. Remember, heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes the greatest courage comes from the smallest hearts. Thank you for reading Max and Sam's story. Now go out and create your own story of kindness today.